Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to peel back the shimmering facade of one of the most beloved, yet terrifying, figures in Greek mythology, Apollo for millennia. We've hailed him as the radiant god of the sun, of light itself, of music that stirs the soul, of poetry that elevates the spirit, of healing that restores, and of prophecy that guides the lost. His lyre, a symbol of cosmic harmony, soothes the wildest beast and the most troubled heart. His arrows, often associated with swift, righteous justice, strike with unerring precision. His sacred oracle at Delphi, a beacon of truth in an uncertain world, has shaped the destinies of kings and commoners alike for centuries. He is, by all accounts, the embodiment of purity, reason, but what if the very essence of that dazzling, unyielding light cast the deepest, most chilling shadow? What if behind the golden aura and harmonious melodies, beneath the veneer of noble purpose, lurks a control freak of cosmic proportions? A deity whose love can be a suffocating obsession, whose sense of order demands absolute conformity, and whose justice is a chilling testament to absolute What if the serene intellectual god we admire harbors a wrath so profound, a possessiveness so unyielding, that it twists beauty into horror and life into an eternal monument to his will? Prepare yourselves, because the Apollo you thought you knew, the benevolent sun god, is about to be eclipsed by a darker, more complex, and utterly terrifying truth. We are about to venture into the unsettling heart of a god who, in his pursuit of perfection, leaves a trail of broken lives and shattered destinies. Pause for effect. Let the unsettling premise settle. Our journey into Apollo's shadowed heart begins with a tale of desperate flight and chilling capture, the myth of Daphne. He saw her, a nymph of ethereal beauty, and in that instant a spark ignited, not merely of desire, but of a possessive, all-consuming fire. This wasn't the gentle flame of affection. It was a wildfire of entitlement. Ovid's ancient verses paint a vivid, breathless chase. Apollo, struck by one of Cupid's malicious, golden arrows, burned with an unquenchable, relentless passion. Daphne, by contrast, had been struck by Cupid's leaden arrow, instilling in her an equally fervent aversion to love, especially to the insistent pursuit of the magnificent god. He pursued her through forests and fields, his divine legs effortlessly gaining on her mortal swiftness. He called out, not in humble supplication, but with a litany of his divine attributes, a recitation of his power, his fame, his unparalleled status. "I am no rustic," he declared, his voice echoing with cosmic authority. "I am Lord of Delphi, healer of the world, master of the lyre, archer divine." He spoke of his virtues, believing they were irresistible, an unassailable argument for her surrender. But to Daphne, his divine status was not an allure. It was an escalating threat. His very brilliance, his relentless pursuit, felt like an inescapable trap. Each step he gained, each promise he uttered, only amplified her terror, confirming her instinct that to be caught by this god meant the obliteration of her freedom, the complete annexation of her will. She ran until her mortal strength failed, her lungs burning, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. In a final, desperate, gasping plea, she cried out to her father, the river god Peneus, for transformation, for Phaeone Fae escape from the god's grasp, and in an instant a miracle of desperate metamorphosis occurred. Her supple skin became rough bark, her flowing hair transformed into delicate leaves, her lithe arms stretched into branches, her slender feet anchored into the earth as roots. The fleeing nymph became a laurel tree, her essence forever bound to the soil, her form fixed in verdant stillness, free yet forever, irrevocably bound to the earth, and by cruel twist of fate, to Apollo himself. Apollo, his relentless pursuit finally thwarted by this botanical metamorphosis, did not accept defeat with grace or resignation. Instead, he reached out and embraced the newly formed tree, feeling her heart still fluttering, a faint pulse of life beneath the cool, rough bark. "Since you cannot be my wife," he declared, his voice laced with a possessive authority that sent a shiver through the very air, "you shall at least be my tree. My hair, my lyre, my quiver, my very temples shall always be entwined with you." He plucked a branch, wove it into a wreath, and placed it upon his head, effectively claiming her. He transformed her flight, her desperate escape from his tyranny, into an eternal symbol of his fey glory, his fey triumph. Every victor, every poet, every musician crowned with a laurel wreath since then serves as a constant, chilling reminder of a freedom brutally denied, a choice overridden, a spirit captured not in love, but in a permanent, beautiful monument to his unyielding will. This was not love's embrace. It was possession's grasp, a god's unshakable resolve to claim what he desired, even if it meant turning a living, breathing being into a silent, beautiful trophy, a stark testament to what happens when you dare to refuse a god's insatiable desire. Is this the act of a benevolent lover, or the ultimate expression of a suffocating, terrifying control? Transition: the shadow deepens with an accident. The shadow deepens, growing more ambiguous, yet no less unsettling, when we consider the tragic fate of Hyacinthus, a young Spartan prince whose beauty was so legendary it captivated not only Apollo but also Zephyrus, the west wind. This was a tale of intense affection, of shared passion for sport and beauty. An idol, Apollo, captivated, spent his days with the boy, teaching him the art of the discus throw, racing across sun-drenched fields, exploring the sacred groves. Their bond was deep, intense, and exclusive, at least in Apollo's mind, but this perfect idol was destined for tragedy. One radiant afternoon, during a friendly game of discus, Apollo hurled the heavy disc with immense Zephyrus, the west wind, consumed by a jealous rage at Apollo's monopoly on Hyacinthus's affections, intercepted the discus with a sudden, malicious gust of wind, redirecting its trajectory. The heavy disc, instead of landing harmlessly, swerved violently and struck Hyacinthus squarely on the head. The young prince crumpled to the ground, mortally wounded, blood gushing forth, staining the vibrant green grass crimson. Apollo rushed to his side, cradling him, desperately trying to staunch the flow, attempting to use his formidable healing powers, but to no avail. Life ebbed from Hyacinthus, his breath fading, his eyes glazing over. From his spilt blood, a new flower bloomed, a vibrant purple blossom, its petals inscribed with a mournful cry, "I a fey, a lament of sorrow, forever marking the spot of his untimely demise, a beautiful, poignant tale of tragic loss. Right? An accident, driven by divine jealousy from an outside force." But let us pause and truly scrutinize this now. Apollo, the god of archery, whose arrows strike with unparalleled precision from miles away, the god of foresight, who sees the threads of fate interwoven, the master of precision and control, a sudden unexpected gust of wind, powerful enough to alter the trajectory of a god-thrown discus. Yet Apollo, the seer, the all-knowing, the meticulous, could not perceive, could not present, or perhaps could not prevent a deeper, more unsettling truth from playing out. In some subtle interpretations, Hyacinthus was fail-ready, fey beginning to turn his affections, perhaps not towards Zephyrus, but simply growing beyond Apollo's intense, singular, almost suffocating focus. He was maturing, his interests broadening, his independence budding. The accident becomes less purely accidental when viewed through the chilling lens of a god who cannot tolerate divided loyalties, who cannot bear the thought of his singular hold on another's heart fading. Was it merely a tragic twist of fate, or a subconscious, perhaps even a fleeting, conscious manipulation, a final, desperate act to possess Hyacinthus completely in death, if not in life, freezing him forever in the bloom of youth and sorrow, ensuring he belonged to no other? His beauty forever enshrined in a flower born of Apollo's grief, yet also his claim, the flower sprung from his very blood, bore Apollo's mourning. Yes, but also a quiet, chilling symbol of eternal, sorrowful ownership. The mournful I could easily be read as Apollo's lament, but also his unspoken possessive claim, mine forever. It's a subtle yet profound question mark over the nature of divine grief, and the lengths to which a god will go to retain what he perceives as his. Call to action. If these tales are starting to make you question everything you thought you knew about the gods, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the chilling shadows of mythology. We're just getting started. Now imagine the sheer audacity of a mortal daring to choose another over a god. This is the story of Marsyas. She was a beautiful princess desired by many. Among her ardent suitors were Idas, a brave and stalwart mortal hero, and inevitably the radiant Apollo himself. Idas, in a breathtaking act of defiance and love, abducted Marsyas with the aid of a winged chariot provided by none other than Poseidon, god of the seas. Apollo, enraged by this mortal's temerity and the theft of his desired prize, furiously pursued them, challenging Idas to a confrontation. The conflict escalated, threatening to ignite a devastating divine, mortal war of epic proportions, drawing the attention of Zeus, king of the gods. Zeus, ever the pragmatist, the ultimate arbiter of divine and mortal disputes, had to intervene. He offered Marsyas an unprecedented choice: live with the dazzling, immortal Apollo, forever young and brilliant, or share a finite, fragile life with a brave, but mortal Idas. This was a choice that reverberated through the heavens, an unheard-of concession to mortal will: eternal youth, unending beauty, the companionship of a god of light, music, and prophecy, a life free from the ravages of time, basking in divine glory, or the fleeting, imperfect, yet deeply human life with a mortal man, a life destined for aging, for sickness, for eventual death. Marsyas, after a moment of profound, courageous contemplation, made her choice. Her reasoning was devastatingly simple, yet profound, cutting through the divine allure with the sharp edge of human wisdom. Apollo, being immortal, would never age, while she, a mortal, she feared that, as she grew old, her beauty fading, her body succumbing to the relentless march of time. Apollo's eternal love would inevitably wane, replaced by disgust for her decaying. She chose the finite, imperfect, but steadfast love of a mortal, a love that would grow and age alongside her, over the potentially fickle, yet absolute, love of a god whose perfection might ultimately become her undoing. Apollo, the god of foresight, of beauty, of love, of unparalleled charm, was rejected, not for his lack of appeal, but for the very nature of his divinity. His immediate reaction was not one of understanding or humble acceptance, but of a profound, unyielding sense of betrayal and a subtle, though unspoken, threat that lingered in the air like an electric charge. While Zeus honored her choice, Apollo's quiet acceptance was a mere veneer, a thin disguise over a seething resentment. The sting of rejection, the refusal of his undeniable superiority, of his inherent fey to claim what he desired, lingered like a venomous bite. This story, though ending without the usual brutal vengeance that often accompanies a god scorned, serves as a stark, chilling reminder of the god's inflated ego, his expectation of automatic deference, and the seething, dormant fury that simmers beneath when his desires are not met. When his will is challenged by a mere mortal, it reveals a chilling truth. For Apollo, love is often indistinguishable from a fervent expectation of reciprocal adoration, and any deviation, any choice that denies him is seen as an affront to his divine status, an unforgivable sin against his preeminence. The quiet fury of a god denied is often more terrifying than his overt rage. Transition to explicit vengeance, psychological torment. The Trojan princess, whose haunting beauty and piercing intellect captured Apollo's heart. He desired her not just with passion, but with the fervent zeal of a collector. He offered her a gift of immense power, a tempting pact, the unparalleled ability of prophecy, to see the future, to know what lies ahead, in exchange for her love, her intimacy. A powerful, seductive offer that promised divine insight and boundless knowledge. Cassandra, initially swayed by the sheer magnitude of the gift, accepted the ability. But as Apollo pressed for the promised intimacy, for the full payment of her part of the bargain, she recoiled. She refused him, a god scorned, not just denied, but explicitly rejected after he had already bestowed his divine. And Apollo, rather than revoke the gift of prophecy and impossibility as divine gifts, Once given, cannot be truly taken back. Fay resorted to a punishment far more insidious, far more cruel. He cursed it in a horrifying act of spite. He spat into her mouth, a defiling gesture that ensured that while she would always see the truth, always foresee the impending doom, her prophecies, clear and accurate as they were, would always be dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman. Imagine the unspeakable horror of her existence. To see the future with crystal clarity, to know the impending doom, Fay the deception of the Trojan horse, the fall of mighty Troy, the massacre of her family, her own inevitable, brutal demise, Fay to scream these warnings, to plead with her people, to beg her king and countrymen to listen, only to be met with incredulous stares, with pity, with scorn, with absolute dismissal. Her own family, her king, her countrymen, all thought her insane, a tragic figure speaking nonsense. Her truth became her torment, a solitary agony that slowly, inexorably, gnawed at her sanity. Her foresight, a profound blessing twisted into a relentless curse, became a solitary prison of knowledge and powerlessness. Apollo didn't just punish her, he trapped her in a living. He didn't want to destroy her body. He wanted to shatter her mind, her credibility, her very essence. He wanted her to suffer the torment of knowing without being able to act, to scream without being heard. His control was so absolute, his vengeance so meticulously crafted, that he twisted the very fabric of her perception and her reality, making her a pariah, a prophet of doom, doomed to be unheard, condemned to watch helplessly as her warnings materialized into devastating reality. This isn't just spite. It is a chilling, calculated act of psychological warfare, ensuring her suffering. A god's ultimate power isn't just in what he can physically do, but what he can Fay undo, Fay within you, how he can corrupt your very connection to reality. Short pause, change of tone to artistic dominion and retribution, but Apollo's control extends far beyond matters of the heart and the intricacies of prophecy. It permeates the sacred realm of art and skill, demanding absolute, unquestioned supremacy. Enter Marsyas, the satyr. Marsyas had discovered a mystical double flute, abandoned by the goddess Athena, who discarded it after realizing it distorted her beautiful face. Through dedicated practice, the satyr had become an astonishingly masterful musician, his melodies haunting and captivating, capable of moving listeners to tears or joyous celebration. So profound, in fact, was his skill that he, in a moment of hubris or perhaps genuine artistic belief, dared to challenge Apollo, the very god of music, to a musical contest. Apollo, the golden, haired god of the lyre, the epitome of musical perfection, could not suffer such an affront. A mere satyr, a rustic creature, daring to challenge a god. This was not just a friendly test of skill, it was an audacious challenge to his divine authority, his artistic dominion, his very identity as the unparalleled master of the Muses. The Muses themselves, the goddesses of inspiration and arts, were chosen as the impartial judges. The contest began. Marsyas played his double flute, its haunting, reedy notes weaving intricate tapestries of sound. The forest seemed to hold its breath, entranced. Then Apollo played his lyre, producing harmonies of unparalleled beauty and sophistication, celestial and pure. The Muses were indeed torn. Both were masterful in their own right, each bringing a unique, profound beauty to their art. But Apollo, ever the cunning strategist, the master manipulator, added a new, cruel clause to the terms of the contest midway. They must play their instruments upside down and sing while playing. This was physically impossible for Marsyas and his flute. The instrument was not designed for such contortions or for simultaneous singing. But Apollo, with his lyre, could a clear manipulation, a shifting of the goalposts, designed to guarantee his victory by rendering his opponent's instrument useless. The Muses, perhaps swayed by the god's undeniable power, perhaps by the perceived impossible challenge, or perhaps by subtle divine influence, reluctantly declared Apollo the victor. And then came the punishment, a chilling descent into barbarity that belied Apollo's radiant image. Apollo, in his incandescent wrath, in an act of horrifying vengeance for the audacity of the challenge, flayed Marsyas alive. The satyr screams, a symphony of unimaginable agony and despair, echoed through the ancient forests, mingling with the sound of his own skin being stripped from his living flesh. His raw, bloody skin was nailed to a tree, a grotesque banner of divine triumph, a macabre warning to any who dared question Apollo's supremacy. From his blood and the tears of the nymphs who mourned him, a river flowed forever called the Marsyas, forever mourning the satyr's horrific fate. This wasn't justice. It was a chilling, public display of absolute, unmitigated power. It was a message etched in blood and bone for all to see. Dare to challenge the god of music, dare to question his supremacy, dare to even approach his level of artistry, and you will pay an unbearable price, your very being annihilated. Apollo, the god of harmony, the patron of the muses, created the most dissonant, terrifying spectacle, all to maintain his iron grip on artistic dominion. It begs the harrowing question, is true art born of harmony and inspiration, or does it demand a terrifying, singular, and utterly ruthless control? Transition to another tale of swift, brutal justice, showcasing his impulsive rage. Apollo's swift and often brutal justice, fueled by an almost pathological intolerance for perceived betrayal or defiance, is perhaps nowhere more evident than in the tragedy of Coronis. Coronis, a beautiful Thessalian princess, had captured Apollo's heart. She was carrying his child, Asclepius, a future god of medicine, a beacon of healing. Apollo, with his omniscient prophetic vision, assigned a pristine white raven as a loyal sentinel, its pure feathers a symbol of its untainted loyalty, to watch over Coronis and ensure her fidelity. But Coronis, whether due to a momentary lapse in judgment, the irresistible pull of mortal affection, or a true change of heart, fell in love with a mortal man, Ischys, and became intimate with him. The white raven, observing this perceived betrayal, this unforgivable transgression, flew with urgent speed to Apollo, its raucous cries delivering the devastating. Apollo's reaction was immediate, incandescent, and utterly devoid of mercy. There was no grief, no sorrow, no moment of reflection or consideration for context, only pure, unadulterated, volcanic rage. He cursed the raven, condemning it for bearing such ill tidings, transforming its pristine white feathers to a permanent, dark, mournful black fay, a mark of its cursed message, a symbol of his fury. To this day, ravens are black, bearing the indelible stain of Apollo's wrath. Then, in a fit of divine fury, a whirlwind of vengeful fire, he sent his twin sister Artemis, goddess of the hunt and swift retribution, to kill Coronis. Artemis's arrows, precise and deadly, found their mark piercing Coronis's heart, ending her life in an instant. As Coronis lay dying upon her funeral pyre, the flames beginning to consume her body, Apollo suddenly relented, a flicker of divine concern piercing through his blinding rage. He realized, with a prophetic flash, that his unborn son was still alive within her. With a swift, divine act of surgical precision, he cut Asclepius from his dying mother's womb, rescuing the child from the fiery demise he had condemned her to, but leaving Coronis to her deserved, yet brutal fate. The sheer speed of his wrath, the utter lack of mercy, the immediate overwhelming desire to punish a perceived slight, even at the cost of his beloved and the mother of his own child, reveals a frightening impulsiveness and a profound intolerance for anything less than absolute loyalty. Beneath the calm, rational facade he often presented, his control over his emotions was as absolute as his control over fate. But in reverse, when that control snapped, when his expectations were betrayed, the consequences were devastating, a whirlwind of immediate, unthinking vengeance that left a trail of death, sorrow, and irreversible destruction. He punished not only the perceived transgressor, but also the innocent messenger, painting the world around him with the indelible hues of his fury and proprietary indignation. Engage the audience. These stories are just scratching the surface of Apollo's complex and often terrifying character. If you are finding this narrative as gripping and eye-opening as I am, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss on. The twins, Apollo and Artemis, often act in terrifying concert. Their combined fury, a cataclysm of divine retribution, a storm of celestial vengeance. The story of Niobe perfectly encapsulates this shared, terrifying capacity for absolute, unforgiving reprisal. Niobe, Queen of Thebes, was blessed with an abundance that she saw as unparalleled. She boasted of 14 magnificent children, 7 strong, handsome sons and 7 beautiful, graceful daughters. A number far exceeding the mere 2 children of Leto, Apollo, and Artemis. In her overwhelming hubris, Niobe publicly mocked Leto, claiming her own fertility and lineage were vastly superior, and audaciously demanded that the Thebans cease their worship of the divine twin. This was more than a mere insult. It was a direct, blasphemous challenge to the gods' honor, their very right to worship, a direct attack on their mother. Leto, deeply offended by Niobe's impudent blasphemy, appealed to her powerful children, Apollo and Artemis, swift and absolute in their response. Their hearts burning with righteous indignation for their mother's honor, descended upon Thebes. With chilling precision and unyielding resolve, they unleashed their divine wrath. Apollo, with his gleaming silver bow, systematically shot down Niobe's 7 sons as they practiced athletics in the city square. One after another, their proud forms falling lifeless to the ground, their screams of terror and agony echoing across the plains, each arrow finding its mark with ruthless. Then Artemis, with her golden arrows, targeted the 7 daughters, felling them in quick succession within the walls of the palace. Their innocence, no shield against divine fury. Niobe, the proud queen, watched in unimaginable horror as her entire lineage, her joy, her pride, her very reason for boasting, lay dead before her eyes, a field of lifeless forms. Her boasting turned to utter despair, her overwhelming grief transforming her into a silent, weeping statue of stone, forever condemned to weep for her lost children. While Artemis delivered half the devastating blow, Apollo's direct and active participation in this wholesale massacre solidifies the chilling truth about their shared divine nature, absolute unwavering loyalty to their mother, and an equally absolute, unyielding demand for respect, obedience, and recognition of their divine superiority. Any slight, any challenge, any perceived arrogance from a mortal is met with total, annihilating retribution, leaving no room for negotiation, no hope of mercy. It's not just about defending honor, it's about demonstrating the terrifying, untouchable nature of divine power, a power that crushes dissent and obliterates those who dare to elevate themselves. This tale, though shared with his twin, highlights Apollo's readiness to commit wholesale slaughter for the sake of wounded pride, leaving no room for negotiation or mercy. The radiant light of Apollo, in this instance, became a blinding, consuming fire of vengeance, burning away all life, all joy, all hope, leaving behind only the cold stone of despair. Transition to his influence over destiny, highlighting manipulation. Apollo's controlling nature is perhaps most subtly yet profoundly embedded in his primary role as a god of prophecy and fate. The Oracle of Delphi, his most sacred site, was not merely a source of knowledge and cryptic warnings, but a powerful instrument of influence, often subtly guiding, or sometimes outright. Kings desperate for guidance would send embassies from across the known world, desperate for a word from the Pythia, Apollo's priestess, who in a trance-like state would deliver cryptic, often ambiguous, yet ultimately potent pronouncements. These prophecies, however veiled, often set in motion chains of events that were irreversible, forcing mortals into choices that irrevocably. Consider the harrowing story of Orestes after his father Agamemnon's brutal murder by his mother Clytemnestra and her lover Aegisthus. Orestes, consumed by grief and a thirst for justice, sought counsel from Apollo's oracle at Delphi. The prophecy was shockingly unequivocal, a chilling command from the god himself. Orestes' famous avenged his father by committing the unthinkable act of matricide, killing his own mother. A horrifying command, an act that would unleash the wrath of the Furies, ancient goddesses of vengeance whose sole purpose was to punish kinship murderers. Yet, Apollo, through his oracle, essentially commanded Faye this terrible, soul-shattering act, placing Orestes in an impossible moral bind. A direct conflict between filial duty to his father and the primal cosmic law against matricide. When the Furies, with their serpentine hair and terrifying cries, relentlessly pursued Orestes, hounding him across the land for his Instead, he actively defended him, arguing his case before the venerable court of the Areopagus in Athens, presided over by the wise goddess Athena. Apollo argued that the father-child bond, specifically the male lineage, was paramount, overriding the mother-child bond, and that Orestes was merely an instrument of divine justice, carrying out a necessary... He manipulated legal and divine principles, twisting complex moral considerations to justify the horrific act he himself had commanded, ultimately securing Orestes' acquittal. His role wasn't just to foresee the future, it was to orchestrate it, to guide, to ensure his version of justice was enacted, regardless of the immense mortal suffering and moral quandaries it caused. He controlled the beginning of the tragedy, the middle, and sought to control the end, bending destiny to his will, even if it meant forcing a son to commit matricide and then arguing for his exoneration. It's a chilling reminder that divine guidance can often be a subtle, yet powerful form of divine manipulation, shaping destinies with an unseen, unyielding hand, all to fulfill. Apollo, in his wisdom, is also a master chess player, using mortals as pawns in games whose rules only he truly understands. Reflection and conclusion, synthesizing the dark side, these narratives, drawn from the deepest currents of Greek mythology, paint a portrait of Apollo far removed from the benevolent sun god we often imagine. They reveal a deity whose love can be a suffocating cage, whose justice is swift, often merciless, and disproportionate, whose artistry demands absolute supremacy and brooks no rivals, and whose foresight is frequently a tool for manipulation and control. Apollo is indeed a god of light, but it is a light so intensely bright that it eradicates all shadows, leaving no room for dissent, for independent thought, for personal choice, for independent will. He represents the terrifying allure of perfection and control, the unyielding desire for an ordered, harmonious world, but one where that harmony is achieved through absolute, unwavering conformity to His relentless pursuit of Daphne wasn't merely love. It was the unquenchable desire for absolute possession, for ownership of beauty. His accident with Hyacinthus, a chilling echo of possessive jealousy, an inability to tolerate a rival, even a perceived one. His treatment of Marsyas, a simmering, deep-seated resentment at being denied. A god unaccustomed to being told no, his curse upon Cassandra. An act of psychological torture for the ultimate rejection. A weaponization of truth against the one who dared to defy him. His horrific flaying of Marsyas, a brutal, public assertion of artistic dominion, and a bloody war. His fiery vengeance on Coronis and the devastating massacre of Niobe's children, terrifying demonstrations of unbridled, impulsive rage and collective retribution for perceived slights to his honor or his mother's. And his manipulative role in Orestes' tragedy, a masterful orchestration of destiny for his own brand of justice, demonstrating his willingness to sacrifice mortal will, being for divine principle as he defines it. Apollo is not merely a god of reason. He is a god who demands his reason to prevail, at any cost. He is the master architect of his own universe, and woe betide anyone who dares to deviate from his grand design, anyone who challenges his authority, or anyone who chooses a path not sanctioned by his divine will. His light illuminates, yes, but it also exposes, judges, and burns away all opposition. It is a light that demands unwavering worship, unyielding obedience. This isn't just about a dark side, it is about the inherent, chilling danger of absolute power, even when wielded by a god associated with all things good and beautiful, with all that is pure and noble. It forces us to confront the unsettling truth that even divine perfection can be a prison, and that the greatest tyrants often mask their true nature behind the most dazzling, benevolent facades. So, the next time you cast your gaze upon the sun, the next time you listen to a harmonious melody, the next time you hear a prophecy of fate and you think of Apollo, the radiant, benevolent god, remember the chilling shadows that stretch behind him. Remember the rustling leaves of Daphne, the blood-stained discus of Hyacinthus, the silent agony of Cassandra, the flayed skin of Marsyas, the burning pyre of Coronis, and the weeping stone of Niobe. Remember the cold, calculating hand of control beneath the warmth of the sun. The ancient Greeks, in their profound wisdom, understood that even the gods, in their immense terrifying power, reflected the most profound and unsettling aspects of human nature, the insatiable desire for control, the crippling fear of rejection, the absolute demand for loyalty, and the chilling capacity for unimaginable cruelty and manipulation when challenged. Apollo, in his terrifying perfection, in his unyielding demand for order, is perhaps the ultimate cautionary tale, a poignant reminder that the path to a harmonious, ordered world, when paved by a single, unyielding, divine will, often leads through a valley of tears, through shattered lives, and through the echoing silence of silenced voices. He reminds us that even light can blind. That is all for today's video. If you found this journey into Apollo's darker aspects enlightening, thought-provoking, and perhaps a little unsettling, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us continue to explore these deep, complex stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for another mythic exploration.